Did you catch that? What is up, guys? It's me, Troy, and I'm here again with another video, of course. But anyway, I want to say thanks to everybody who recently liked, commented, and subscribed. Thank you for being here. And today we're going to be talking about R is for Ricochet. Can I get my angles right? R is for Ricochet by Sue Grafton. This is the 18th book in Sue Grafton's Alphabet / Kinsey Millhone mystery or hard-boiled detective fiction series. As you guys know, I absolutely love this series, love this character, love this writer. But anyway, as it concerns R is for Ricochet, Kinsey Millhone is retained by a 50-plus it's just an elderly man named Lord Nafferty. At this particular point, you know, he's very ill, he's very sick. He had a daughter very late within his age, and his daughter's name is Reba Lafferty. Because he comes from so much money and he has so much money, you know, he pretty much spoiled this girl. You know, this girl's mother was very much inattentive to her. So Reba grew up in this lifestyle where she could pretty much get away with doing whatever she wanted to do. Unfortunately, Reba held on to that spoiledness about her, and you know, her and her bad behavior of doing whatever she wanted, reckless and rebellious, we can go ahead and say, and that landed her in the California Institute for Women for embezzlement. So basically, she could get anything she wanted from her father. You know, he had money, and she still decided to go embezzle money for this company that she worked for. However, that is with good reason, because she was basically covering the ass of her boss, which is someone she was very much in love with at the time. So she basically took one for the team. But as it pertains to Kinsey's role within this book, Lord Nafferty, as I said, he retained her to go to the California Institute for Women and to make sure that when his daughter is released, which is on a Monday, that she stays on the straight and narrow. That means no more booze, no more racketeering, no more gambling, because Reba Nafferty has a gambling problem as well. And most of all, no more Reba Nafferty reconnecting with her former boss. So, you know, he's trying to keep her on the straight and narrow. You know, he's like, this is my daughter, this is my only child, she's spoiled as hell, but I have got to look after her before I die. But all the same, as Reba is released from prison, more of her old peers and love interests start to show back up into her life, and that's when things get super messy. As I said, she was covering for her boss, and now her boss wants a little bit of some return in all of this. Like, you know, Reba knows a little bit of too much of his secrets, and he has to make sure that, you know, she's silenced. Unfortunately for Reba, what breaks all of this is the fact that she finds out that her crush, or her old boss, the guy that she pretty much went to jail for, is sleeping with her best friend, you know, on top of the fact that he has a wife himself. So R is for Ricochet really becomes a game of how much is Reba willing to go to maintain her innocence in the face of having to seek revenge against her boss, who, of course, sent her to jail and is now cheating on her with her best friend, although he has a wife. Keep that in mind. But adjacent to that, he is willing to do anything he can to keep Reba silent. So that is where the whole cat and mouse tug and play goes on in R is for Ricochet. And I have to say, this is probably one of Kinsey's most hard-boiled cases that I can kind of recall. I mean, it's been a while, because usually her cases involves a murder of some sort, and there was a murder in this particular book, but it was mainly about paper pushing, relationships, money, and that sort of thing, and who can top who on the escalator ride to the top, which the top is essentially going to be jail. Okay, so while primarily that particular story took up the full brunt and meat of this particular book, there were several little smaller side threads that were personal. Usually with one of these novels, Miss Grafton has like the major A story, and then there's like a smaller B story. Usually the A story is where the murder is taking place, and the B story is something a little bit more domestic for Kinsey to uncover, like, you know, a skip trace or something of that nature. But with this particular book, the Reba Nafferty and Lord Nafferty case was very much primary, and the little trickle of stories in between did not involve any investigating of domestic cases at all. It was mainly Kinsey trying to sort out the love life of her landlord Henry. And Henry, as some of you guys may or may not know, he's a 80-plus-year-old guy who's just can't seem to get love right. And to be honest with you, I found that those moments where Kinsey was trying to sort out Henry's love life to be kind of a bog. The book was kind of stale in that sense, in that I understood why in the next preceding books within the Alphabet series that Sue Grafton started to play around with different points of view, because really I just didn't see the point of all of that. You know, I am a fan of Henry, but I didn't necessarily care to be reading about his love life and, you know, his brothers and sisters, you know, that sort of thing. Like, I would have much preferred if Grafton gave us a B story, like I said, that was a little bit more domestic in a sense. But with that being said, I think ultimately the theme of this book had a lot to do with what we do in the face of love, in the face of companionship. You know, Grafton was not only playing with, you know, Reba hurting her father by seeking, you know, the attention of another man who was a criminal, but Grafton was also playing with the relationship of Kinsey reconnecting with an old lover of hers, and that was really interesting because, you know, despite all of the Henry stuff, I did enjoy, you know, seeing Kinsey's personal life get some play. And then, as I said before, there is that love tug between Henry, his interest in I think she was a art connoisseur lady, and then, you know, Kinsey in between that relationship. So, I mean, ultimately, the theme of this book had a lot to do, as I said, with what we're willing to do for the face of love, what we're willing to sacrifice within ourselves, what we're willing to give up, you know, how far outside of ourselves will we step in order to, you know, gain companionship from another person. So, you know, despite the fact that there was no B story that I found that could make some more relevance to this particular book, you know, on the side, I will say that I did enjoy the consistency that Grafton gave as it concerns her theme, because that was just really interesting. I really love watching that play out between each of these three relationship threads. Didn't care for the Henry thing, but at the same time I understood why it was there. But besides the love thing, there was another thing that was taking place within this book that I did enjoy, and that was watching Kinsey Millhone, you know, the quote-unquote good girl, the professional, the good Girl Scout who dots all of her I's and all of her T's. You know, there's none of this playing back and forth or straddling the fence, which really, Kinsey is a good girl, but, you know, she's killed people before, so let's just be real about that. Of course, in self-defense. But as I was saying, it was a little theme of Kinsey the good girl getting entangled with Reba, the shadowy girl. And it kind of reminded me a lot about season 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Buffy, the quote-unquote good girl, the good angelic, you know, not self-righteous, but the righteous, and, you know, proclaimed model citizen girl, was getting entangled with Fate, you know, the evil, the dark slayer. So there was a lot of tug and war between, you know, Kinsey trying to take control of Reba's reckless behavior to keep Reba safe, and Reba passing judgment onto Kinsey for being the straight and narrow, when, you know, clearly as far as Reba was concerned, there was no other way to do certain things within the book, try not to spoil it, other than to be reckless and to just go head forward into it. So that was really interesting watching these two come to play. And to be quite honest with you, you know, Kinsey has done a lot of reckless and crazy things before in the past, so I kind of felt like she was, while I understood the theme was playing out really well, I kind of got a feeling that she was just a little bit off from who she normally would be, and instead she was taking a back seat to all of the madness that Reba was putting forward within the story. And that was interesting, but at the same time it was like, you know what, sometimes I was like, you know what, Kinsey would probably normally do this anyway. You know, this is a girl, Kinsey is like a woman who is a professional liar. And granted, she had to tell some lies within this book, but at the same time, it's like, Kinsey, are you really gonna let Reba take over the story right here? Like, stop doing that. Don't you do that. But even regardless of all that, I absolutely love these books. You can just even consider me biased. I am such a fan of Kinsey Millhone's voice. I don't think she was as witty as she normally is in this book. You know, she usually has some one-liners and some zingers that she always serves out, and she dishes them out really coldly. But in this one, like I said, I think Reba took up most of the whole being cunning and being wily and, you know, having all the one-liners and the zingers. You know, Kinsey just took a back seat to Reba, which is something I didn't have like a big major problem with. It was just kind of noticeable. But in the end of it all, you know, Grafton's writing remains consistent. You know, Kinsey's voice is always consistent as is. I really love how Grafton does a great job of transporting me as the reader into her settings. You know, Kinsey on the highway, Kinsey, you know, it's really describing a house, you know. And as always, and it's always something that I love in these books, is I love when Kinsey, the dialogue. I love when Kinsey has conversations with different characters, how she sniffs out information, how she keeps note of it. And speaking on that, this is probably one of those Private Eye Hardboiled series that I don't find as confounding as some others, because even for me, the reader, I can manage what's going on through the perspective of Kinsey Millhone, because she, as a private investigator, does a great job, or really we should say Grafton, does a great job of reiterating certain information that me, the reader, has to keep up with in order to see whether I can get ahead of Kinsey or not. So I'm gonna leave, guys. I cannot wait to come back and finish with S. So far, I am enjoying it, and as I said, this is where Grafton starts moving into multiple point of views, as well as jumping back and forth in time. And I noticed that as of this point, it doesn't really bother me. I'm enjoying the book all the same, because Kinsey's voice, as always, is very clear and consistent. And that is it, guys. Keep reading, keep shining, keep writing, knowing you can always count on me for sure. That's what Kinsey Millhone is for. You like that? Bye.